Welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from December 11th, 2020, and I'm recording this on June 11th, 2021. Yes, it's Friday. I usually record these on Thursday, so I'm going to have to rush to get this out, pulled together, and edited for you guys. As always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 from that week and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. They each put out a list of 10. I look at those two lists basically and see how they're doing 6 months later, so we can all learn about what caused them to be hot at the time, what factors kept them going or caused them to drop back, make people lose interest, so that we make better decisions about the hot books that we chase versus the ones we're just patient on. With all those caveats, we got 18 books to talk about this week. So let's get into the list. First up, we have Metal Gear Solid #1. This is our only kind of option news book this week. And this is basically that there were rumors that Oscar Isaac was attached to potentially be Solid Snake in a new movie, a new Metal Gear Solid movie. No idea if we ever got confirmation. I couldn't find anything. I didn't look real hard. I didn't have a lot of time this week, I'll be honest. But back then, raw copies were going for $40. 9.8 was going for $150. Now it's a $10 to $40 book. 9.8 still went for $150, but there was only a couple sales. So overall, this one's down. The vast majority of sales are those raw copies. And definitely a bit of an I'll be back, because you can definitely get it for under the $40 it was going back then. Next, we move into covers. We only have two of those. And it is, first one is Usagi Yojimbo #15. This is the Matthias Santaluco, 1 in 10. Not sure how he pronounces his name. But this was going $60 for raw copies right out of the gate, which is huge for 1 in 10. But this one has not turned into a big trap. It's now a $15 to $40 book with most of the sales on the lower end of that. So this one is way down, has not held, although there's not a ton of them out there though. There's not a ton of sales, but even the ones that are there are definitely down. Next, our other cover of the week is The Last Ronin #1. This has been we've talked about a lot of these different covers. This is the red foil, one per store thank you variant. Just kind of a second print kind of thing. But anyway, it was going for $125 to $175 out the gate when stores first got it. Now it's going $80 to $180. 9.6, which is the only real slab sales, for $125. So this one is, overall, it's down a little bit. It's definitely an I'll be back, because you can definitely do better than those prices you got if you're a little patient, although some of the sales are still in that same range of what it was going for back when it first came out. So, with that, we're going to move into Comic Buzz, and there's only two of those this week. We have a lot of MCU, a lot of Star Wars books this week. If you remember, this was right around the time when they had their little shareholder thing. So that's a lot of what's going on here. But first, we have Shogun Warriors #1. And this hit the list because they did the solicitation for crossover 3. Issue 3 by Donny Cates, and there appears to be a shadow of a figure that looks sort of like the Shogun Warrior figure, so everybody started jumping on this. This is why people think I dislike spec books. Raw copies were going for $5 to $15, which you'd say nah, but it was like 1,000% increase in sales. 9.8 went for $200. This is $1 to a $15 book with very few sales recently. 9.8, the couple that have sold are still in the $150, $200 range. Overall, this is down, but I don't know what people were specking on here. It just seemed like a very odd spec to me. Just because, maybe it might have been. There's a ton of like Gundam type suits that could have been. I don't know what it actually turned out to be, or if it turned out to be anything. But anyway, it doesn't appear to have been this because it has not sustained or jumped in value anymore. Next, we have DC's Very Merry Multiverse #1. This is the first appearance of Kid Quick, who basically becomes the future state Flash. This book in the run-up to Future State was going for, I don't know. CBSI had this one, and they didn't put a list for prices. So I just had to go off kind of the last 3 months of prices I could look at for off of eBay. it's been very steady in the $10 to $15 range for raw copies of this. 9.8s are only going 35 to 60, which is not very much. That's barely slabbing costs. So yeah, this one, but overall, the most sales have been raw copies. They've been very steady over the 3 months. That's about the best of the information I can give you because they didn't have a price back then. Next, we're going to move into some DC, HBO Max kind of spec. And first up was Countdown presents The Search for Ray Palmer, Superwoman and Batwoman #1. This was some event that I didn't remember back from in 2008. And this is the first appearance of Plastic Woman. And supposedly there was rumors that Warner had plans for this character. We've seen how well Warner Brothers has gotten DC stuff made. That seemed very like a stretch to me. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. But anyway, back then raw copies were going for $30. There's only been one recent sale. It was for $15. This one was definitely a trap. Yeah, just there's no, doesn't appear to be any legs to this particular rumor. So yeah. Next, our other DC TV is Naomi #1, and we do know there is a show coming for this. We've actually seen the actor promotional photos of the actress as Naomi, and this book jumped back up to a $70 to $90 book. 9.8s were back up to $150, $250. If you remember the original Naomi hype, 9.8s were pushing $500-$600. I think there was even a few sales above that range. So even with this news that there was an HBO Max show coming, didn't approach near those numbers in the craziness when it first came out. Now it's still going $60 to $80 for raw copies. 9.8s are actually crept up, and a lot of the sales are 9.8s. That's why I put it as kind of up and worth it in that $250 to $300 range. But again, still not near where the original hype for Naomi was. And we know there's a show coming, and we've seen the actress. But definitely this book, if you got it off the shelf, if you were patient on this book and bought it when it dropped back down to like a $20 book, you're doing really well right now. So with that, we're going to move into MCU-related stuff. And first up, we have Daredevil #9, first appearance of Echo. Back then, raw copies were going for $40. 9.8 was $280 when we got the reveal of the actress who was going to be playing Echo in the Hawkeye show. Now these books are even higher. We've got news that there's probably going to be an Echo. She's going to get her own show follow-up later. So this raw copies for this book are now $150 to $300. 9.8s are $650 to $750. So this book has been straight cash. Yeah, it's been making leaps and bounds. Everybody is super interested in this character. I'm interested to see where the show goes. Right now we're getting Loki, which is one of the shows I was most looking forward to. I've slowly, my excitement for Hawkeye continues to grow as we approach it, especially since they're kind of following the fraction run, it appears. So, and speaking of, our next book is Hawkeye #9, which is the first appearance of Clown. And we got an actor confirmation for this character in the show. Caused raw copies of this book to jump up to $20. 9.8s are hitting $25 for this villain that's going to appear in the Hawkeye show. Now raw copies are $10 to $30. 9.8s are $125 to $200. So been pretty steady, up just a little bit. So this one's kind of been worth it. If you got in on it back then, you haven't done too bad. It's definitely doing okay right in that same range to a little higher. So next we have Avengers 19, and this is the first appearance of Swordsman, another character believed confirmed for the Hawkeye show. Back then, raw copies of this early Avengers book were going for $320. A 9.6 sold for $21.50. That was actually the last 9.6 sale, so don't really have any kind of comparison for you right there. But now raw copies are more in the $50 to $200 range, so they've come back quite a bit. And it really depends on condition, obviously, for this old of a book. The highest graded copy that's sold recently has been an 8.0, and there's been a couple of those sales, both around $600. So yeah, this one appears, at least for raw copies, to be down. A bit of an I'll be back. Not a ton of hype around Swordsman right now. We'll see how big a role he plays in the show. With that, we're going to move to Thor, God of Thunder, number 2. This is the first appearance of Gore the God Butcher, and we finally got confirmation that this is the character that Christian Bale is playing in Thor Love and Thunder. As a result, raw copies of this book jumped up to $200. Now they're $100 to $200, so they've crept back down a little bit as we're kind of in the lull without much news right now. 9.8s are going $550 to $600, which is still really strong. So this was down a little bit of an I'll be back, but still a great book, and I'm looking forward to seeing this portrayal and this character come to the big screen. Next, we have War of the Realms, Omega, number 1, and this is the first appearance of Jane Foster as Valkyrie. So we know she's going to pick up the hammer, going to get Thor. There's wonders whether or not she'll still be Thor at the end of the movie or if she'll transition to Valkyrie that quickly. We'll see what happens. It seems like it might be quick. I would think there'd be some sort of follow-up before they did that, but people were starting to spec on this book a little bit. Raw copies were 5 to 10. 9.8 went for 120. Now raw copies are 10 to 15. 9.8 still that just over $100 range. So this one's been pretty worth it. It's been pretty steady, right in the same range. But it hit the list because there was like a 1,700% increase in sales. And, I don't know that we're going to get her this time as Valkyrie, but if they continue to tell Thor stories, which I think Hemsworth says he wants to keep doing, and they can keep Natalie involved, I would guess that's where it's going eventually. Next, we got Captain America 312. This is the first appearance of Flag Smasher, and we got promotional information for Falcon and the Winter Soldier that showed Flag Smasher, that was going to be part of the villains. Obviously, that show is out if you've seen it. The character has come and gone, but back then, there's a big increase in sales. $5 to $15 is still what the book was going for. 9.6 went for $70, is why they put it on the list. Now raw copies are 5 to 20, although occasionally 40, which is closer to where it was during the show. So this book spiked during the show, has been creeping back down. So compared to 6 months ago, it's up and sort of a worth it, but compared to during the show, it's actually down. But anyway, 9.6s are still in the $80 to $100 range. I list 9.6s here because there aren't really any 9.8s listed or sold. So, must be not many of them on the census, and not many of them are selling for that particular book. With that, we got 5 books left, and they are all Star Wars related books. First up, we have Star Wars Jedi Yoda. I don't think there's technically a number with this, but this was a one-shot back from 2004. Raw copies for this were going 60. 9.8 was going for 300. I'm not sure what the spec is here. There's supposedly a first appearance of some character I've never heard of, and I'm a fairly big Star Wars fan. But anyway, now it's a $15 to $80 book, with most of the sales well below that $60 mark from before. There's only been one 9.8 sale recently, and that was for $300. I feel like this is mostly just being driven by the Yoda cover, which it is a really cool Yoda cover. So next we have Star Wars number 42, if the cat doesn't knock over my my camera. That is the first appearance of Boba Fett. Obviously, we got Boba Fett in the Mandalorian show, and we got news of the Book of Boba Fett? I forget now what they're going to call that show. Anyway, that was coming. Back then, 9.8 jumped up to an $1,800. 9.6 went for $1,000. Now, raw copies are setting at $200 to $500, with 9.8s in the $4,500 to $5,000 range. 9.6s, though, are still around $1,000, $1,200. So it's really the 9.8 that's jumped the most. This one's definitely up and definitely been straight cash over the last year or so, really, because a lot of renewed interest in Boba Fett once we found out he was coming back to The Mandalorian, and now that he's getting his own show. 3 books to go. Next is Star Wars Legacy number 1. I think this was on the list 2 weeks ago. Raw copies of this were going for $200 back then. It's the first appearance, several first appearances here. Cade Skywalker, a couple of Darths. And people are just, like, these are just characters people were specking on back then. So, like I said, back then, raw copies $200. Now it's a $50 to $135 book for a raw copy. 9.8. $500 to $700. So 9.8 is still going strong, but definitely the raw books have slipped back a little bit. So this one's down, a bit of an I'll be back, but still a strong performer overall. Next, we have Star Wars Mace Windu number 5. maybe the first appearance of Ahsoka in canon, or in Marvel canon. She does like appear like in a little flashback panel where he's thinking about people that he fought with and stuff. There was a lot of debate on this, that Star Wars Age of Republic #1, the Darth Vader 14. There's like 4 or 5 different books that people have debated. I think this is technically the earliest one. Back then, raw copies were going for $40. Now raw copies are $30 to $80. 9.8 is $200 to $300. So this one's been up maybe a little bit. It actually got a little higher than this later before it kind of has crept back down a little bit. But been straight cash so far. People are chasing other Ahsoka books because they can't afford that Clone Wars #1 anymore. So that's kind of what's driving this. And we know there is an Ahsoka show coming. So, and then our last book of the week is Star Wars #2, which was a long time criminally undervalued book. This is the first appearance of Obi-Wan, the first appearance of Han Solo, the first appearance of Chewbacca. And this hit the list because we finally got full confirmation of the Obi-Wan show coming to Disney+. Raw copies were going for $30. 9.8 hit $875. Now raw copies are $50 to $150. 9.8 is $33. Well, there's been only 2 9.8 sales recently, $3,300 and $4,500. So those are way up. So definitely a lot of interest in this book. So that's what we got this week. We got the little recap slide here in a second. I want to thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you next time.